It's back! What's up guys, it's been a while since I've had a Tonemaster Pro here in the studio, and now that Fender sort of recently released their big 1.6 update, I figured it was time to take another look, see how things have improved, and more importantly, I wanted to see how the Tonemaster Pro would work as sort of the brain in the wet dry wet setup that I've been enjoying now for close to a year with my Quad Cortex on the stage. Now before I get any further, I would like to give the guys at Zzounds once again a big shout out for sending me this unit to try out for a little while, and if you want to grab one for yourself, I will have affiliate links in the description for this, the amp, the Schecter, all the good stuff will be down there in the description. Also, all of the chapters and timestamps will be down below, so you can skip to whatever part of this video that you want. Also, if you're interested in my review of the Tonemaster Pro, or you want to check out other videos kind of like me showcasing how to create awesome unique sounds by blending two different amps and cabinets together, or how this thing sounds absolutely cranked into a Class A Orange OR30 amp, I will put links to those videos down in the description below. I had a lot of fun with this unit the first time I had it here in the studio. Basically, the kind of big TLDR here is that I have now owned and gigged with all of the pro level digital units other than the Headrush, and I still think that the Tonemaster Pro is the best all-around digital unit if you don't want to capture profiles. The menus and the user interface on this unit are the most intuitive, and they're the most easy to use. The amp models sound every bit as good as the ones in my Quad Cortex and the Axe FX3 that I had. And the foot switches on this are easy to program, and they offer very powerful MIDI levels of control with a really easy to understand user interface. Really, the switching is honestly crazy. It's full-blown MIDI, but it takes all the frustration and the programming part out of it by just letting you tap exactly what you want the switch to do. But out of all the features the Tonemaster Pro has, I think that the most impressive and one of the main discussion points for today is that the virtual cab emulation in here is very powerful. It's extremely flexible and very intuitive. With the new update, it also unlocks the ability to use a single block on your signal chain to blend two different cabinets. Now, each cabinet gives you its own mic, giving you the extra flexibility with the sound that really, I think only the Axe-FX3 and the FM9 unit can match. Now, the reason I'm focusing on the cab here is because the real backbone to making a hybrid stage or studio setup really work is the cabinet sound. Now, I've been running a hybrid setup on stage for quite a while now, and basically, there are three main components to this. A guitar amp, usually a tube guitar amp, an effects processor with an IR loader or cab sim, and a PA or FR/FR speaker. The general premise here is that you send a regular guitar tube amp into a digital unit for the cab sim and effects, and then out to a recording interface if you're in a studio environment, or out to a PA if you're on stage. So you get all of the great analog feel and traditional amp control knobs from the amp, combined with the stereo effects from the effects unit, and the ability to send one signal to the house PA and another into a second, like a stage monitor or something like that. Now, in addition to this, you still retain the option to use a normal speaker cab if you want, but since it's not really uncommon these days for venues to either not allow cabs on stage or smaller stages just not having enough room for a cabinet, if you still prefer the sound and the feel of your favorite tube amp, you don't have to sacrifice that at those smaller venues. It's basically the perfect kind of like why not both option, and bonus points here if your amp is capable of being controlled by MIDI, as you can use most of these digital units to send MIDI controls to your amplifier. Now, there are some important caveats to this that you need to be aware of. First off, most amps have to have a speaker load connected to them or you will destroy the output transformer. Some amps like the Mark VII here have a built-in reactive load, allowing you to safely run the amp without a cab connected. This also lets you use the dry line out connection for your sound from the amp. The Mark VII also has a built-in IR loader, but we're ignoring that for this video. So it's up to you to check if your amp has something like this built in. If it doesn't, like all of my other amps, you'll need to find some type of load box to keep the amp safe. If you're never planning on having the speaker cab connected to the amp, something like the Sur Reactive Load is an inexpensive option that sounds really great, and it's a perfect studio tool for a setup like this. Now, for a lot of us though who intend to play live and we want the option to use a normal speaker cab on stage, that's where things can get a little bit tricky. You'll need a device that can not only provide a reactive load, but also something that will allow you to pass your amp signal through to the cabinet, giving you the option to lower the stage volume output from the speaker cabinet. This is going to let you crank your amp and still maintain a civilized volume for the smaller venues, or when you're playing at home and you don't want the police showing up at your house. It's a way to get a great crank sound without the cranked volume. Some examples of this that can facilitate this type of operation is like the THD hot plate back here, the Mesa Powerhouse, the Toneman Iron King, and also the Riviera Rock Crusher is a great one as well. All of these will get the job done, and there are some more premium devices like the Oxbox, the Waza Tube Amp Expander units, the Captor X, the Red 7 Amp Central, I think it's called, and even the Fry-Up power stations can facilitate this. But for the sake of this discussion, I think that simple is better, and despite some of those units doing their own cab sim, we're wanting to focus on the digital units taking care of that, because honestly, I think it's just a better sounding solution and a more robust solution at that, and it's easier to use. So for the setup, you run your signal either straight from the amp if it has the built-in reactive load and a line out into your digital unit, or for amps that you do need a reactive load, you would send a line output from that reactive load box into the digital unit. Make sense? Okay, so now that you've got your raw amp sound coming into the digital effects unit, depending on the unit that you're using, you'll set up a signal path with stereo effects, your cabinet simulation, or an impulse response block. Regardless of which digital unit I've used this setup with, there have been a couple of things that I always like to do. First, you want to set up a noise gate. If you're going to use a high gain amp, take advantage of the noise gate that most of these digital units have built in, so that you can stay nice and quiet when you're not playing. Second, resist the urge to immediately load up an EQ and start messing with that. Save that for later after the main tone shaping has been done, with your cab sim, and make sure you put it before the speaker sim in the chain. Lastly, make sure you have your outputs configured based on how you want to run your sound. Now by that I mean, if you're wanting to do a wet, dry, wet setup on stage, you'll want to be able to sort of configure your sound separately from what the sound guy gets. On the Fractal units and the Quad Cortex, you have the ability to separate your left and right channel of one main output section to their own separate channels. That allows you to control the output volume of each side of the stereo sound independently. The Tonemaster Pro unfortunately locks the output of both left and right into one volume control, so you would need to adjust your stage sound from your FR using the volume control on your monitor itself. Now the main idea with this is that you don't mess with the sound going to the PA. So after all this is taken care of, you're basically ready to just sort of tweak the effects to how you want them to sound and get your cab sim set up, and you're ready to just enjoy the sound and feel of a real tube amp combined with the consistency and the flexibility of a digital cab solution. But wait, there's more! That's not all you can do with this type of setup. So if you sing on stage like me, you can also set up your digital unit to add EQ, compression, reverb, and stuff like that to your vocal signal path. Now, not all digital units can facilitate this. Smaller devices like the Stomp HX and also to a degree the Fractal FM3, they won't be able to run that type of setup, but the Tonemaster Pro, the Helix units, the Fractal FM9, and the Axe FX3, and the Quad Cortex, they can all do that no problem. Now the benefit of this is not only just to sort of simplify your overall pedal board setup, but also gives you that much more control over how the mic signal is processed, and also lets you retain control over your sound, so you're not having to rely on the sound man to add compression or reverb or anything like that to your vocals. So with our band, we're all using Quad Cortex units on stage, and it makes it really easy for us to just hand the sound guy an XLR cable and say, make this come through the PA. And they can handle the levels, and they won't have to worry about anything else. Again, convenience and consistency are the name of the game here. So by relying on one main unit to sort of take control over all your effects and your speaker sound, you're simplifying your setup so that there's less things to go wrong and to troubleshoot if there is a problem. You can also greatly cut down on cabling problems, issues with maybe like a power supply not working right or a pedal losing power. You also have the added benefit of being able to quickly jump to another preset in these units in the event that you do have a problem with your amp on the stage. Now, if the entire digital unit itself fails, well, hopefully you've got an amp with a built-in IR loader like this, or the Badlander, the little Synergy IR20, a couple of the baby Ingles have it, and then you're just sort of a cable swap away from getting your sound back into the board. If you don't have an amp with something like that built in, I would highly recommend keeping something like maybe the Sonic Cake impulse response loader in your gig bag. I think it's around 50 or 60 bucks, and it lets you load up your own impulse responses and send it to a pair of outputs so you can still keep your stage sound and have a signal going to the PA. One other popular option is those little baby Tonex pedals, keeping one of those in your gig bag. Accidents happen and equipment failure happens, so always make sure you have some way of finishing the show. Look, finishing a show with less than ideal tone is still better than not finishing at all. All right, now let's take a closer look at the setup that I have going on here, and we'll kind of start on the top row. Really won't mess too much with the vocal line down at the bottom, but we're going to focus more on the top row where all the guitar stuff is happening. Okay, so like I mentioned, I have a noise gate here at the beginning to start things off of the chain, and I'm using the metal gate just for the sake of this video and kind of how close I am to the amp. The metal gate is sort of required to get the clamping quickness down. The normal gate works great on stage, but the metal gate here sitting right next to the amp with it being cranked the way it is, the metal gate is the way to go. So I have that set at the beginning, and again, I always do all of my main tone shaping with the cabinets first before adding the EQ block here, but adding it before the cabinets gives it a little bit more tone shaping power. So, okay, we'll go ahead and skip the cabinets because I'll come back to that in a little bit more detail, but I've got a little bit of a room reverb set up just to give a little bit of ambience without having to go full-blown reverb. And I'll let you hear it without it, so I'll bypass it here. So right now it's completely dry. Turn down the gain, it's a little rowdy. A little bit of gain reduction there. So that is completely bypassed, and then if I re-engage the room ambient sound, it just sort of lets the sound kind of breathe a little bit more. It's not really a reverb in the traditional sense, the way that I think of a reverb. It's more of just sort of like an ambience to the sound, just sort of gives it a little bit more depth. All right, let's leave that and go to the chorus. And if you saw my previous videos, you'll know that the chorus can increase the volume output a little bit. And the way that you get around that is by also assigning, as you can see when I engage the chorus, it also turns on a volume pedal down there that I have it set at 92%. So it lowers the volume ever so slightly just to maintain unity with the dry sound. So without it, so that's the chorus sound that I have set up, and it's got that nice kind of lush 3D sound to it that I really like. And because ideally you're running a stereo output to two different places, you get that extra depth to the sound when you run it like this. Okay, next I have some small plate reverb here. Again, nothing major. So you can see the settings in here. Again, nothing really kind of overpowering to the sound, and for me, less is more on stage. And yeah, again, it's not one of these like big spacey sounding reverbs, so like the cloud reverb, celestial, nebula, shimmer. Some of these are new. Like I think the convoluted and the atmosphere, I think those are new. But again, I really don't have very much. I don't have kind of a place in my sound or workflow for reverbs that are kind of like that big, huge tail end on there, or I don't really have any kind of place for that in my sound. So good old plate reverb is good enough for me. Now, at the very end of the signal chain, boost, this just lets me play solos, just makes me louder, and I prefer right around 3 dBs is kind of where I've found the sweet spot for me on stage to be. And going back here to the 10-band EQ, I'm glad that they added the 10-band EQ. This wasn't here when I first had this unit, so I'm glad to see that the full 10-band EQ is here, because it really gives you that much more control over the sound. And for me, especially playing live, I like to dial back the low end, kind of like shave it off just like that, slope down kind of gently, but it helps clean up the low end and helps me not get in the way of our bass player. So shaving down the low end like that and really not messing with any of the others, that's really all I use it for. Now obviously with an amp like the Mark VII, you have tons of control over your low end, but I prefer a little bit more of a surgical approach to it using this. And also this is much easier to dial in like mid-song. You can sit there, if I'm playing, I can just tap right here, and you can use your foot on the side of these because it's got kind of like this little knurled edge on the side of these knobs. Like I've made changes to parameters mid-song while I'm playing using like the side of my shoe during songs. So again, this is very easy to work with, and then you can just pop and you're back into the song without having to reach back down on to the board. Conversely, the Quad Cortex, you don't have a button to just leave the parameter editing. You actually have to hit that little bitty check box to like the little OK mark. You have to hit that little check mark to get out of the editing. Okay, now let's get to the main attraction here, and that is the cabinets. Now in version 1.6, their update, they gave you the option to blend two different cabinets together using one sort of main block. And all of the blending and editing is all kind of handled in one area instead of having to jump out of your cabinet editing maybe leave one cabinet to go to another cabinet to edit, or if you want to change the mixer where you can adjust the panning and the level of each cabinet, you don't have to go into the actual mixer block. You can do it all from within the cabinet editor here. Okay, now here's how I have the cabinet set up and sort of the sound that I've landed on. Cabinet 1 is a greenback cabinet, and cabinet 2 is the Vintage 30 cabinet, and I really like the way that these two cabinets sort of blend together. The greenback cabinet has a little bit more bite in the top end and a little scoop in the mid-range. The Vintage 30 cabinet has a more prominent push in the mid-range, and it lets you sort of blend the two sounds using the little blend control up here. So actually I'll just hop on over to the next page that gives you the blend value here. And obviously, because I want the same sound going to both the house and my FRFR, I have the panning 50-50 so that the cabinets aren't splitting to the left and right in any favor. So this is what it sounds like right here with the 60% blend. Tell you what, let's hop over to channel 2 here. A little less rowdy, just so we can kind of focus more on the sound of the cabinets here. All the way to the greenback. So you can hear how the greenback is scooped and the Vintage 30 is kind of got that like very prominent pushing mid-range. And I don't favor either one, but when you blend them together, the sound really kind of comes together. So if you want more heavily in the Vintage 30's favor, 50-50. Tell you what, let's take some of the mid-range out using the amp instead of more of a greenback blend. Tell you what, that made it a little bit more boomy, so what I'm going to do is go back to my EQ, pull that down some. It's all the way down. And the gate shutting it right away. Just a ton of flexibility out of all of this, and the way that you can blend the cabinets in this. Again, I know I sound like a broken record here, but it is so impressive how good of a sound you can get from the cabinet, the virtual cabinet in this unit. And the intuitiveness of the interface and how good all of these impulse responses sound, it's what makes this such a impressive piece of gear, in my opinion. That it can be overstated how big of an impact the cab sound has on the overall sound, but B, how easy and powerful this interface is, the way that they've designed this to really dial in exactly how you want it to sound. Honestly, more than anything, it makes me wish that Fender could make a pedal that just had the cabinet stuff in there and would have like a blend knob and a level control for mic 1, mic 2, or cab 1 and cab 2, and a smartphone app that would let you basically give you this interface. Like that alone, I would buy that in a heartbeat. I mean, it would kick that aux stomp out the door with a haste. So yeah, again, very, very, very impressed with how good this sounds and how easy and powerful it is. Okay, well, that is going to wrap up this video revisiting the Tonemaster Pro from sort of the perspective of using it as a DI signal processor and cab sim device. Another big thanks to the guys at Zzounds for sending me this unit out to take another look at it, and I will have, again, links down in the description if you want to grab one of these. And as always, buying anything from their site, using those links is a great way to help support the work that I do here on the channel. And if you enjoy the content and you're not already subscribed, consider hitting that button down there to help my channel grow. Thanks again for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.